Hey guys, it's History Behind the Warrior and welcome back to another Mortal Kombat video. Now in today's history of breakdown and analysis, unlike my normal videos where I explore the background of a character, in today's video I'll be talking about the realms in the Mortal Kombat universe, how did they come to be, what has happened to a lot of them, and what creatures and characters do reside within them, as I find it a very interesting topic in Mortal Kombat to explore what exists and where it's really all come from. What is the story behind them? So without any further ado, let's get on to the history of the realm. Now to really talk about how the realms came into being, we must go all the way back to the Dark Ages, that's being an empty void that existed before time. Now at the very dawn of this age, there were seemingly two different deities that existed, that being the One Being and the Elder Gods. Both are extremely powerful deities in the universe, but needless to say that they didn't get along with each other. You see, the One Being was at the top of the food chain, and the only source of food he had was the Elder Gods. So naturally the two sides would come to blows, with the ancient deity gaining the upper hand on nearly every single occasion. So the Elder Gods came to the realization that they needed a new approach to attack him. A head-on battle would not do them any good, so they would forge 6 Kamidogu amulets and use them in order to split the One Being's consciousness. His mind would be scattered into fragments, and he would be sent into a deep slumber. Now of the remains of this battle, the Elder Gods wished to put his power to use, and thus created the different realms of the Mortal Kombat universe, with 6 of the Kamidogus working as locks amongst the larger realm, as it did keep the One Being's mind displaced. Now before we expand on this, I wish to touch on something, that's being the relationship between the Elder Gods and the One Being in the rebooted timeline, because with the inclusion of the Titans, it raises more questions than answers, and slightly does tweak up the lore. Now seemingly everything is the same, however with the existence of Titans, many are under the belief that the One Being may in fact be a Titan himself. Now I cannot confirm nor deny this, as we do not have solid information, but with the end of Mortal Kombat 11, and how it really does hint at the idea of cosmic deities, I wouldn't believe that it's too far-fetched to think that this idea is on the table. Now in the rebooted timeline, the Elder Gods defeat the One Being in the same manner, but instead of Kamidogu amulets, they use Kamidogu daggers, and this in turn separates his consciousness, and his physical being is transformed into the different realms. So everything is roughly the same, but with minor tweaks, and the reason why I'm mentioning this is because the Kamidogu daggers become a key plot point in the Mortal Kombat X comic book series. Now, of the One Being's body being separated into different realities, what were these different realms called? Well, first, let's talk about the most obvious one, Earthrealm, the realm of mortals and man, with the Thunder God Raiden as its protector. Now, despite the countless wars that man has had, they are now currently in an age of peace, at least on a surface level. Behind the scenes, Earthrealm was locked in Mortal Kombat with Outworld for thousands of years, and it almost seemed like they would have lost. However, Earthrealm was able to produce a fine warrior, that's being Liu Kang, who would go on to win the Mortal Kombat tournament, defeat Shao Kahn during Earthrealm's invasion, and become an icon amongst its people. Now Liu Kang wasn't the only fine warrior to be produced in Earthrealm, as there were individuals like Sonya Blade of the Special Forces, Johnny Cage of the Hollywood Hills, Kung Lao of the White Lotus Society, and countless others. Earthrealm really does have a lot of talent, and although they are mortals for the most part, a fair few Earthrealmers do have some talent in utilizing magic. Although it is quite rare amongst them, it is indeed something that they do have, but it's usually due to their heritage and origins of where they come from, because although the Grand Master of the Lin Kuei, Kuai Liang, is based in Earthrealm, his descendants do in fact come from Outworld. Johnny Cage too had ancestors that were part of a Mediterranean war cult that specialized in fighting the gods. Now outside of the obvious talent, what else exists within Earthrealm? Well, it is in fact home to many factions within the series. For example, the Special Forces, the Shirai Ryu, the Lin Kuei, Black Dragons, the Red Dragons, and the Takunin. A lot of factions in the Mortal Kombat universe in fact do derive from Earthrealm, but this may also be because a majority of storylines that do go on in the universe take place revolving around characters from this realm. The one location that has become rather important in the rebooted timeline is in fact the Jinsei Chamber, the seeming heart and life force of Earthrealm. The power cast here is strong enough to heal fatal wounds and amplify the power of anyone that steps into it. It's a great and incredible tool, but in the wrong and sinister hand can lead to a devastating fate for Earthrealm, as we did see Shinnok corrupt it in Mortal Kombat X. Now Earthrealm for the most part isn't anything too special in comparison to the other realm, seeing as we the viewer kind of live in this reality. So with this being said, let's move on to our next realm, Outworld. Now Outworld is a very interesting realm. Now as far back as the record does go, the very first ruler of Outworld was seemingly the Dragon King Onaga. Onaga, a powerful and wise ruler that seemingly had an undead army. With the necromancy he had at his fingertips and his advisor Shao Kahn at his side, he was seemingly unstoppable, and his power did rival and threaten the gods. But before Onaga could explore the realm, as he was on his own personal mission to find immortality, he would be poisoned by his advisor, which in turn would begin Shao Kahn's long reign as Emperor of Outworld. And it's here where the realm really changed. You see, Shao Kahn always had a thirst for conquest, so after becoming Emperor, he would start attacking other realms, engaging them in Mortal Kombat, and merging them with his own. An iconic invasion in the series was in fact that of Edenia, and the reason why this was so big is because Edenia could be seen as one of the big major realms. So when it was conquered, it really did assert how strong Shao Kahn and his army had become. Now after the events of Mortal Kombat 3, we do in fact learn of some of the other realms he conquered and merged with Outworld. One of them is Sartarra, the home of the Saurians, Bayturnus, the home of the vampires, and in the rebooted timeline, we learn about Anya, which is where the Kytinn derive from, Osh-Tekk, where Kotal Khan comes from, and of course Tarkata. But we will be touching on all of these realms later, as we will talk about their fall and how they did become a part of Outworld. So Outworld is in fact home to many different races, but the main residents within Outworld actually look human. The only difference between Outworlders and Earthrealmers is the fact that the Outworlders are far more talented in using magic. Outside of this, there's no real big difference between the two races. However, when we start moving to the edges of Outworld, we start to see some of the other resident races, that being the Centaurs and the Shokan, and the two did battle each other for a very long amount of time until they were enlisted under Shao Kahn's control. Now Onaga and Shao aren't the only two individuals to have ruled Outworld. As you see, after Shao's seeming demise in Mortal Kombat 9, his daughter Melina would take over the role, and this would later be followed by Kotal Khan, and finally Kitana herself. So there have been multiple and different rulers, each with their own different approach to how to look after the realm. Although we didn't get to see any of Onaga's rule, he was seeking immortality. For Shao, it was conquest. For Melina, it was destruction, as she relished in the suffering of others. For Kotal, it was redemption, as he wished to breathe new life into Outworld and take it in a new direction. And for Kitana, it was equality, as she wanted all of the realms that had been merged with Outworld to seemingly live in unison. So each of the Khans in the Mortal Kombat universe have all bear different qualities to them, some for the realm and some for themselves. And because of this, it has resulted in Outworld taking on very different appearances. Under Shao Kahn's rule, the realm fell into disarray, looking deserted and barren, but once it was under Kotal's control, it truly started to prosper, creating opportunities for people to carve their own lives. It was a step up and was very beneficial for the realm. So over the years, as well as the merging with different realms, Outworld has taken on numerous different appearances. So now with Outworld covered, let's go on to our next realm, that being the hellish Netherrealm. Now the Netherrealm in itself is quite an interesting one. Unlike the previous realms that I've talked about, where magic is a source of energy which one has to learn, the Netherrealm's hellish landscape leaks and oozes magic, and due to the nature of this nightmarish hellscape, the Netherrealm seemingly has a passive effect to weaken and dampen magic users, so it can even render the strongest of gods to mere mortals. Now due to its magical nature, the Netherrealm somewhat functions as a universal hell, so regardless of whatever realm you perish in, if you were a terrible person in life, your soul would be forsaken to this realm, and it wouldn't be able to ascend to something like heaven, something that does exist and we will be touching on later. Now those that are sent to the Netherrealm are damned for an eternity of torture and suffering. This may come at the hands of an Oni, or maybe even the demon lord Lucifer himself, but Lucifer isn't around these days. You see, upon the realm's creation, Lucifer was somewhat assigned as the protector of this realm. Much like how Raiden protects Earthrealm, was not only Lucifer's job to protect this realm, but guard the fallen elder god Shinnok, as during the Dark Ages after the One Being fell, Shinnok pitied the life created from the One Being's body and went on a massacre across the realm. Although he was successful in killing many, he was eventually defeated by his brothers and sisters and was later imprisoned in the Netherrealm, with Lucifer guarding his body. But unfortunately for Lucifer, a ploy was put together by the Netherrealm native Quan Chi, and he was able to free Shinnok, to which then Lucifer was seemingly destroyed. So the Netherrealm would be somewhat absent of an actual protector for a substantial amount of time. So the Netherrealm was somewhat forged in Shinnok's image, and Shinnok would maintain his facade of being imprisoned for thousands of years, whilst Quan Chi ultimately had control over the Netherrealm. Now the Netherrealm has never really been the centerpiece of big battles in the Mortal Kombat franchise. It only becomes an active battleground in Mortal Kombat 11, but for the most part the Netherrealm is kind of a passive realm, keeping itself to itself, even if that means torturing someone to the brink of insanity. It just works as an active hell for everyone, and can be seen as where someone atones for their sin. But there is in fact much more going on in this realm. You see, there are two native species in the Netherrealm, that's being demons and Oni. Now there have been multiple demons within the series, and we in fact have seen a fair few. Now, although demons are known to have a rather supernatural look to them, many demons within the series in fact take on a humanoid form, one that alters their appearance and allows them to maintain a human form. We see this with Serena, Ashra, and even Quan Chi, who are demonic in nature but seem human right from the get-go. Now typically these forms are held together with extremely powerful magic, but it should be noted that once they do leave the Netherrealm, these forms tend to have a habit of falling apart, revealing the monstrous interior of the wielder. The only somewhat sub-race that actually deals with this rather well are in fact specters. As you see, a majority of specters that exist in the Mortal Kombat universe are in fact vengeful spirits brought back from the dead, and due to this, they do not have a demonic form and thus do not have to worry about it. But it is worth mentioning here that specters are typically weaker when they are outside of the Netherrealm. Once they gain the home field advantage, they can become nigh unstoppable. Now the final race that exists within the Netherrealm are in fact the Oni. They are monstrous in appearance and huge in stature. The size and strength of these Oni really do vary, but one thing that they do all share in common is their lack of intelligence, but incredible brute force. Now one more interesting thing about the Netherrealm before we move on is that the demons and specters that exist there actually speak backwards, and funny enough, this is a trait they do share with Chaosrealmers. But that's everything I do have to say about the Netherrealm. Now let's go to the other end of the spectrum, that being the beautiful Edenia. Now if you can't really tell, Edenia is based off the Garden of Eden. It is lush, beautiful, and thriving with life, being inhabited by Edenians and overlooked by the beautiful Queen Sindel and King Jared. It was the somewhat perfect realm, one that many thrive to be like. On top of this, the realm was overlooked by a god known as Argus and his wife Delia, so the realm was well guarded, and because of this it prospered with life, and many lived with glee and happiness. But this wouldn't last forever. As you see, due to its perfect appearance, it would catch the eye of the conqueror Shao Kahn, who engaged the realm in Mortal Kombat and battled it for thousands of years. And despite the mighty warriors that Jared put forth to battle Shao Kahn, Outworld just proved to be far too strong, defeating them in 10 consecutive Mortal Kombat tournaments and invade their realm. Shao and his forces killed thousands, with his Tarkatan horde swarming and killing all that it saw. Now despite his victory pretty much being guaranteed at this point, he really wanted to twist the knife here, killing King Jared in front of his wife Sindel and marrying her as well as adopting her child, that being Princess Kitana. From here, Edenia would become a shell of itself, being merged into the wastelands of Outworld, to which it would then be left as a fragment of war and a somewhat trophy of Shao Kahn, showing the success in his conquest and pursuits. Now Shao would lose control of the realm. As you see, after his defeat in the third Mortal Kombat game, Sindel, Kitana, and Jade were able to free Edenia from Outworld's clutches, allowing it to once again become its own realm and welcome back its people that were scattered. From here onwards, the realm would prosper once more under Sindel's control, wishing to do what would make Jared proud. Now this is of course very different to that of the new timeline. Due to the nature and changes from Raiden tampering with the timeline, Edenia is never unmerged with Outworld, and many of Earthrealm's defenders are killed. So after Shao Kahn is defeated, Edenia is simply left as a part of Outworld. It wasn't able to break free and become its own thing. And one thing of course still worth mentioning here that's still relatively new, although I would take it with a pinch of salt since she is DLC, is the new somewhat origin of Edenia's fall, of which it seemed like Sindel had plotted with Shao Kahn to have King Jared killed. But again, DLC characters, so take it with a grain of salt. Now the Edenians as a whole are proud and wise people. Due to them being nearly immortal, at least when it comes to aging, they tend to outlive many individuals across the realm, and because of this do gain more life experience. One thing that is worth mentioning is that due to how slow they age, a young individual in their youth may in fact be thousands and thousands of years old. Edenians just do not age at a normal rate, but they are still somewhat mortal, as they can be harmed like any other human. The one incredible thing about Edenians, and it seems to be a trait that they share a little bit with Outworlders, is their inherent and uncanny ability to use magic, something that they can manipulate in different ways. it varies from individual to individual, so no Edenian is ever really the same. The range of their powers do vary depending on their heritage, as we have individuals like Taven, Dagon, and Rain, who are all sons of Argus, but all do wield different abilities. So each Edenian is unique amongst its own kind. But yes, that pretty much sums up everything I did wish to say about the Edenians. So now let's move on to our next realm, the realm of Cydo, aka the Orderrealm. Now the Orderrealm is a really interesting one. Being run as a republic and having very strict rules, law and order is absolute in this realm, and those that go against the laws will be punished to extreme measures, something which we would see happen to Shigenko. Now Cydo culturally is a very interesting realm. It deviates away from the modern age and goes full on futuristic. You see, the Orderrealm is far more technologically advanced than that of Earthrealm, creating weapons and ships that could be seen as strange. What's impressive here is that due to how far they are in their technological advancements, they've been able to integrate this with their own realm, so it looks drastically different to anything you'd see in Outworld and even Edenia. You see, there are many within the Sidon realm that do feel safe, however it ultimately does take one small mistake for you to be imprisoned and punished. There are in fact many that have been killed for the smallest of mistakes, so there are both good and bad aspects to the rather strict law. Now due to how cutthroat it was, an individual by the name of Darius would somewhat break off from the Orderrealm and create his own resistance, battling the Orderrealm guards in the hopes of overthrowing the Senate. Darius in a way could be seen as a freedom fighter, however Darius is in fact as ruthless as the Senate, so they are effectively two sides of the same coin. It ultimately comes down to a question of who has control, and this battle would go on for many years, neither side ever gaining the upper hand. Now outside of their infighting, the Orderrealm does have a very shaky relationship with other realms. There are some that they cooperate with, like Edenia, and there are some they outright attack or try to avoid, the two prime examples being Outworld and the Chaosrealm. Now the Chaosrealm is in fact a realm that they are constantly in conflict with, as the Sidons wish to create law and order in the Chaosrealm, but you see, due to the random chaotic nature, they have been unsuccessful. So the two realms are constantly in conflict with each other, as the Orderrealm themselves do in fact have a lot of interest in the Chaosrealm. So with me pretty much covering everything about Cydo, let's talk about the Chaosrealm. Now the Chaosrealm really does live up to its name. It's a wasteland of anarchy and insanity, with no real sense existing amongst its inhabitants. The Chaosrealm is truly something quite unique. Now unlike the Orderrealm which I just talked about, there is no governing body here. The Chaosrealm just lives and dies by its madness. It is by all intents and purposes the exact opposite of what Cydo stands for, and thus because of this, the Orderrealm cannot stand the Chaosrealm. But what I find extremely interesting about the Chaosrealm is that the realm wasn't always like this. The Chaosrealm at one point in time was a breathing and living world, one that was in its early days and still being forged into something new. But it's here where they would be assigned a god to protect it. Unfortunately for them, this god, not going by an actual name, was seemingly the god of chaos, and once he unleashed a cataclysmic event referred to as the Tempest, it fragmented and basically destroyed the realm. Any chance of a real society or sense being formed was completely thrown out the window at this point in time, and in a weird twist of fate, the inhabitants of the realm didn't resent the god, but instead accepted his madness, and from here they developed a somewhat cult-like religion, worshipping the anarchy that he had created. From here it's where the inhabitants really became Chaosrealm, accepting madness into their hearts and their soul. Now the inhabitants themselves don't look any different from normal mortals, but due to their somewhat radical nature, they would take on strange if not so extreme changes that would allow them to express themselves as individuals. In some cases this may be tattoos, but for one by the name of Havoc, he would tear off half his face and twist and contort his body beyond that of a normal being. Now due to the nature of the Chaosrealm, it wouldn't in fact kill Havoc, and he was able to retain his human form without any permanent damage. The anarchy in the realm favored anyone's madness, and again, as I had mentioned earlier, much like the Netherrealmers, the Chaosrealmers do have a tendency to speak backwards, so sometimes they'll mean the exact opposite of what they say. Now the reason why the Chaosrealm is in conflict with Cydo isn't just because Cydo opposes what the Chaosrealm stands for, but the Chaosrealm in fact houses a lot of useful resources that they could use, such as water, which is in fact something that the Chaosrealmers do hold sacred. You see, the Chaosrealmers do in fact worship water. It is considered sacred to them due to its shapeless nature and how it doesn't actually take a form. Because of water's characteristics, it is considered by the Chaosrealmers to be somewhat chaotic. I know, it's quite strange, but I feel like that summarizes the Chaosrealm in a nutshell. Now let's talk about the realms that have been merged with Outworld that have only been briefly touched on in the series, starting off with Sartarra. Now Sartarra is the tragic homeworld of the Saurian, the reptile race and homeworld of reptile. Now something that many might not in fact know is that Sartarra and the Saurian race in fact originated from Earthrealm. This was back at the dawn of time, so where life was just about to flourish. Not much is really known about Sartarra at the very dawn of time. We never really learned about their culture or how they were at the very early stages of their society. However, what we are aware of is that the Saurians originally had a matriarch that used to control and influence what her race did. They were effectively her worker ants and she was the queen. Now although we do not know her by name, we do know that she had a strong mental link with all members of the Saurians, and that whilst under her influence, they would somewhat enter a bit of a primitive form, seeming more reptilian than man, which is why in the very early days of the Mortal Kombat series, Reptile would retain a human form. But of course, as the series did progress, we would quickly learn that Saurians could return back to their primitive form even if they were separated from the matriarch, which is why even in the rebooted timeline, Reptile looks the way he does. Now for the most part, the Saurians were a primitive and private race. They kept themselves to themselves and didn't wish to get caught up in any affair, but sadly this didn't stop them from being caught in the middle of a war between the gods. You see, I briefly touched on this much earlier on, but when Shinnok turned against his fellow elder god, the battle that the two sides had would spill out and land in Sartarra, scarring and burning their land, leaving it as a barren landscape. And because of this huge battle, many of them were killed and left to live on a desolate realm. Now it's somewhat left unknown as to what happened from this point onwards, but sometime after Shao Kahn became ruler of Outworld, he would invade and conquer Sartarra, merging it with Outworld and taking Reptile to become one of his generals. Due to the mental link now being severed with the matriarch, Reptile seemingly forgot a lot about Sartarra, only having very small fragmented memories about his home world. But that is everything I do have to say about the Saurian home world. Now let's get on to our next realm, the home of the vampires, Vaeternus. Now the vampires in the Mortal Kombat universe are like any other vampire. Sharp fangs, big wings, and extremely sensitive to light. So to that respect, they aren't anything too new. But we do believe that due to their sensitivity to light, that Vaeternus was constantly shrouded in shadow. Again, this isn't solid in stone, but more so something that's loosely implied. So please do take that with a grain of salt. Now honestly, not much is really known about Vaeternus. We are only aware that it was home to the vampires and had been conquered by Shao Kahn. So it was quickly merged with Outworld, but due to one vampire, Netara, she was able to get her hands on a mystical orb and use it in order to free Vaeternus from Outworld's clutches. From here, she was able to restore her people, but tragedy would strike once again, because as she was rebuilding her society, they would be attacked by a crazed Ashura, and Netara was forced to leave the battle in order to save her life, meaning that she may in fact be the last vampire in the Mortal Kombat universe. Now she's yet to appear in the rebooted timeline, so not much is really known. Now the next realm we'll be talking about is Osh-Tekk Island, home of the dangerous Kytinn. Now Kyttinns were extremely dangerous insect-like humanoids, having acidic blood, and the first to expand their kind. They were truly something quite dangerous. Now unfortunately, much like Vaeternus, we do not know too much about their society, only that at one point in time, they had a queen known as Al-Shavar and wanted to expand their hive beyond the realm. And this in fact brought them in conflict with Shao Kahn. Now despite the overwhelming numbers that the Kytinn did have, as they were known for using prisoners of war in order to feed their children, Shao Kahn and his forces proved to be far too much, killing them first in Outworld before finally seeking out Osh-Tekk Island and seemingly vanquishing all of them, with the only survivor being Devourer. Now sadly, this is all we do know about Osh-Tekk Island, but the Kyttinns are extremely interesting, as the Kytinn as a whole do kind of function like a hive mind, where there is a queen bee and a bunch of worker bees around her that will do whatever she wishes and needs. Now sadly, due to this realm being relatively new, as it was introduced in a new timeline, we do not have any more information regarding Osh-Tekk Island. We just know at this point in time, it is merged with Outworld. Now our next realm is Osh-Tekk, made up of an Aztec warrior-like race. The Osh-Tekks were proud people, being an honorable warrior-like race. There was a lot of respect amongst them, and thus combat was in fact a key part of their culture. Now Osh-Tekk as a whole is a pretty spectacular realm, being pretty much coated in gold with a scorching blaring sun. The Osh-Tekk realm is beautiful, and of course in this timeline and canon is where a lot of Aztec and Mayan culture does derive from. So there are a lot of similarities between the two, such as the Osh-Tekk tradition of cutting out the heart of your opponents and ingesting their blood. Now despite Osh-Tekk's ferocious forces and affinity for combat, they would be be no match for Shao Kahn and his forces, as they were defeated in Mortal Kombat and had their realm merged with Outworld. Now the onslaught that ensued in Osh-Tekk would kill tens of thousands, and the only remaining Osh-Tekk is in fact Kotal. Upon gaining the title of Khan, he in fact dresses his guards in traditional Osh-Tekk armor and tribal paint. It's a way of honouring his ancestors. Now again, much like Arnyek, due to this being a relatively new realm, it is underdeveloped. So this is all we in fact know about Osh-Tekk. Now our next realm is in fact Tarkata, which again is another new realm, but unlike Arnyek Island or Osh-Tekk, the Tarkatans have lived in the Mortal Kombat universe for a very long time and were originally written as individuals that were born on Outworld soil. You see, the Tarkatans were said to be a somewhat hybrid of what happens when a Outworlder bears a child of a demon from the Netherrealm. The result is ultimately a Tarkatan, one that bears somewhat human features but has ferocious teeth and an endless bloodlust. In the rebooted timeline, we get a brief hint of it in Mortal Kombat X, where Baraka referred to as Rome being conquered, and in Mortal Kombat 11, we get to see the somewhat remains of their home world, where the Tarkatans live on a barren land without any real houses. They just set up tents and sleep in them. It somewhat shows the devastation that Shao Kahn can cause by ripping the homeworld from a certain race, as the Tarkatans are clearly living in poverty. Now we do not actually get to see Tarkata properly. Our only real interpretation here is the Tarkatan war camp, but one must imagine that some bits of their culture must have passed over. But for now, we know that Tarkata is fused with Outworld. Now this for the most part does summarize all of the canon realms that have been merged with Outworld. There are some other realms that do exist, such as the homeworld of the Nakanada, but there is in fact no information about them. So for now, this does list off all of the realms that we currently know in the main canon that have been merged with Outworld. Now let's move on to a lesser realm, with the first one in fact being the Dream Realm. Now the Dream Realm is actually something quite new, first introduced into Mortal Kombat 9 as part of Freddy Krueger DLC. The Dream Realm is seemingly one that exists in Earthrealm, but does exist on another plane of reality that isn't physical, not one that could be traveled to by normal means. It was used as a gateway for Freddy Krueger to attack and claim victims of the night. It does appear once again in Mortal Kombat X. You see, in Tremor's arcade ladder ending, he travels out to the Dream Realm with the Black Dragon in order to obtain a bomb, one that would attack and scar those caught in a deep dream. But the effects of this realm were rather interesting, as it seemingly enhanced Tremor's power to that of a god. Now due to the fact that the Dream Realm has only appeared with DLC characters, it's hard whether to know how canon this realm is. Now of course, from what you can tell, due to the obscure nature of the Dream Realm, we don't exactly know how it looks. We do get a sneak peek in Tremor's arcade ending of the denizens that seemingly live in that realm, which I'm guessing are ghost-like figures or nightmares from someone's imagination. We just don't know for the time being. Now onto our next realm, and it is one that does technically exist, but again seems to not really work as a physical realm, that being Heaven. Now of course this is most definitely one that does exist. There's a hell, there has to be a heaven. Main big difference between the two is that we never really see a heaven in Mortal Kombat 11. All that we know is that this is where the gods seemingly reside, and is a realm that exists outside of the physical plane. We do get a very brief glimpse of it in Mortal Kombat 4 in Raiden's arcade ladder ending, but outside of that we do not truly know what's going on with Heaven. While this pretty much covers every single realm in the Mortal Kombat series, I'm well aware of realms like Hinpa and the Nightmare Realm, but they don't exist within the main canon, as they live on in the expanded series, that being Mortal Kombat Defenders of the Realm and the Malibu comic book series. So because of that, I haven't covered their respective realms, plus they are in fact way more underdeveloped than even the Dream Realm and Heaven, so you aren't really missing out on much here. But this sums up everything I did wish to say about the history of the realm. I do hope you have enjoyed this video and learnt more by doing so. The idea of this has always been on my mind, but I knew for a fact that it would be a handful to talk about it. Regardless, I finally have decided to tackle it and hope you have come away enjoying it, as this has taken a very long amount of time to make. So I hope you have enjoyed this video and learnt more by doing so. If possible, let's try getting this video to about 500 likes, and don't forget to tick that bell, as it will keep you up to date with everything that's going on with the channel. Now, big question for all of you before I end this video: if you were to live in the Mortal Kombat universe, what realms would you travel to, and what realm would you want to live in? Comment down below, I wish to hear what you all have to say. But yes, that wraps up everything I did wish to say here. So as always guys, please comment, like, subscribe, and share this video with everyone you know. Please take care, and I will see you all next time.